everybody, and welcome to my review for the film The Cloverfield Paradox. For those of you who don't know, I'm a big fan of the Cloverfield franchise. I think Cloverfield was a really good movie. I don't think it's an excellent movie, but I think it's a really well-made found footage movie, and a very well-made found footage sci-fi movie. I love kind of how contained that movie is, how the characters don't know what's going on, the sense of chaos in that movie, and of course, I'm a huge fan of 10 Cloverfield Lane. That was such a great Hitchcockian style thriller, and I just love what J.J. Abrams and all the producers and directors have done with this franchise, both on and off screen. Create this really amazing anthology series with a lot of ambiguity and more questions than answers. And I love how film lovers have just been discussing the heck out of these films and just enjoying them and trying to dig deeper into what's actually going on. So for that reason, obviously, I was super psyched when I saw that trailer for the Cloverfield Paradox, and the fact that it would be giving us so many answers, or was claiming to give us so many answers to a lot of the questions that have remained unanswered so far in the franchise. So without further ado, guys, let me tell you my thoughts on the Cloverfield Paradox. Guys, this movie was mostly a disappointment for me, but I'll start by saying a couple of the things that I did like about this film. One of the things I really liked is the concept of the movie. Not only is this a really good concept for the movie by itself, as a standalone film, but some of the answers that this movie does give in terms of the Cloverfield franchise are really awesome, and it makes me really excited for the rest of the entries of the franchise. I'm not going to give any spoilers as to what those answers are, but when you see the film, and if you've seen the rest of the Cloverfield films, there's some connections that this movie makes that I think are really interesting for fans of Cloverfield, and as a fan of Cloverfield, I was really excited to see those connections being made. Another thing I will give this film is its performances. They're not excellent or amazing, but they are good, and I think Gugu Mbatha-Raw, who plays the lead actress in this film, does a really good job in her performance particularly, and I think the rest of the cast also did a pretty good job. And the performances in this film actually kind of reminded me of the performances in Cloverfield, where no one was excellent, but everyone was good to very good. So again, no excellent performances. That said, I think that these actors are above this script. I think that their qualifications and their abilities are far above the content of this film. And I'll get into the content later, but overall, I think the performances were good. Now let's get into some of the criticisms about this film, and I'll keep it completely spoiler-free and talk only in general terms. But this movie is so silly. The script for this film just doesn't work for me at all. There's a certain event that occurs in this film, somewhere in the beginning or middle-ish parts of the movie, that kind of starts this chain of events. And for me, the selection of events that they chose to basically be a consequence of what happens was just too silly. It's not even illogical necessarily, but what they have happen in this movie for me was stretching a little too far. It got exaggerated, and it kind of seemed like a B-rated nonsense kind of film. And it didn't have that sense of seriousness that the movie wanted the audience to feel. I would have actually liked this movie if it were a comedy, because there are a lot of aspects in this movie where it would work as a great sci-fi comedy, and I wouldn't be mad if that was under the Cloverfield banner. I think that would be something new, fresh, and interesting. But the movie treats itself so seriously, but the content is so basically silly, almost funny, because it just is a bunch of B-rated nonsense that they use to create quote-unquote suspense or intrigue in this movie. And it's sad to see that happen under the Cloverfield name, because they also use a lot of ambiguity in this movie, and that's one of the big trademarks of the Cloverfield franchise. But in this film, it honestly felt like they were using that, trademark Cloverfield ambiguity to create a front for their super lazy and weak writing in this movie. The writing in this movie is really bad, guys. I mean, the direction is fine. I think this is a competent movie in terms of direction. There's nothing, lacking. Even in terms of production scale, the CG, everything looks great. It's a very good packaged film, but the content isn't very good, and it's because the movie's taking itself very seriously and giving us a lot of B-rated, content in terms of what the actual plot is. There are a lot of times in this movie where I felt like this could have been an awesome horror slash sci-fi comedy. But yeah, the movie was just taking itself too seriously, and that kind of tone didn't match. The tone of the serious tone did not match the content of the movie, and it felt like the script had to start making stuff up to keep the attention of the audience. And by the time the movie was over and the credits rolled, I just didn't care at all because the events felt so disjointed in this movie that it didn't really matter to me. Also try and set up this emotional angle around the main character of the film, that lead actress, and I've just seen it be done much better in other films. It felt very unoriginal to me. I wouldn't say that it was a bad emotional angle and it felt fitting for the plot of this movie, but I've seen it be done so much better in so many other better directed films and better made films that when it was being put in this movie, it felt very inorganic and very unoriginal, and I just couldn't form that connection because I'd seen it done better in other movies and it just wasn't fitting with the script of this movie. Hey guys, so I'm continuing this review on a separate day, which is why I have the change in wardrobe. But in general, as I was saying before, there are a lot of scenes in this movie that, take place on the space station. In fact, majority of the film takes place on a space station in outer space. But the movie often tends to cut back to characters on Earth, which creates a really jarring experience when you're watching this movie, because in one moment you're in outer space with those characters and that storyline, and then suddenly you cut to the characters on Earth. And on top of that, the movie is trying to, pack so much into its honestly kind of short running time. While they give an A for effort and ambition to pack everything in, also be a Cloverfield movie and make all those connections, the movie just doesn't come together at all. It ends up feeling very clunky, and it just isn't able to pack all of that in with the script, because this movie ends up being very tonally confused as well, because it's kind of trying to hit all these different notes, but the script just isn't there for this movie. It's more like a horror comedy. If anything, this movie would have actually done better as a horror comedy if the tone weren't so serious, and they take this movie very seriously, which makes the script even more clunky. So for me, this movie just did not come together whatsoever. The different elements that they tried to put in just don't work and they don't click. So for me, The Cloverfield Paradox gets a D. It's a somewhat entertaining film. There's some suspenseful scenes, but the payoff isn't really there. So I would recommend skipping this one. As a Cloverfield fan, I'm saying that to you. I wish this movie had gone for a different genre, because it tries to combine so many genres and isn't able to, succeed at even one of those genres. I feel like if they had picked one genre and gone with it, this movie would have been more successful. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those great things, and I'll see you guys in the next video.